Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. And my name is Parikshit. I'm the Global President of HULTREPRENEUS. HULTREPRENEUS, as you all know, is a club that promotes and supports entrepreneurs throughout the globe at HULT. And today's session is about performance economy. As we entering a new transition to a new industrial era, we thought it would be wise to come from that experience, from that background, one of the pioneers as well, with us, Dr. Walter, who Oluwa Toby, our Vice President, will introduce. Oluwa, over to you.
Absolutely. Hello to everyone once again. Introducing Dr. Walter Stahel. He's the founder of the Product Life Institute in Geneva, a company that aims to provide practical financial and economic growth strategies with lower resource consumption. Beyond this, Dr. Stahel is an architect, researcher, industrial analyst, educator, author, and speaker. He is also a member of several scientific advisory boards and a senior researcher at the Circular Economy Research Center at École Pont Business School. Dr. Stahel teaches at the University of Surrey's Engineering and Physical Sciences Faculty, where he shares his knowledge with the next generation. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to present to you Dr. Walter Stahel. Please a round of applause to wherever you are. You know, you can even put the emojis just to show us that you're clapping. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Oluwa Toby. Now I'll show you in 40 minutes, 80 slides. So I'm afraid you cannot do your emails besides or whatever your intention was, but you will receive the PDF of the slides. Some of them have a lot of text, so you can look at it afterwards. Okay, what's going on? Okay, can you see the slide? Okay, so let's go back to where we started. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are. It's a pleasure and an honor to talk to you on the performance economy. Joyce, you may have noticed that you invited them to the performance economy, which is a nice new thing. You have to think about that. But you know, Murphy's Law, you cannot escape. So let's first look at circularity. Circularity is actually quite an old term, and of course, nature always lived in a circular mood, and we are part of nature's circularity. Now, why is it stuck? It refuses to move. That's interesting. Okay. Well, you know, electronics is invented by man, so don't expect it to work. So let's look at sustainability. Sustainability and circular economy are two sides of two faces of the same coin. One is the physical world, the other one is the qualitative world. But we are basically talking about society. There is a newer definition, of course, the UN term, ecologic, social and governance, note that economy has been replaced by government control and compliance. Okay, for me, economics is very important. Money makes the world go round. The EU term Industry 5 is basically the same thing, except that we have learned from the pandemic that they focus on sustainability, resilience, and people may be what we really need, more than only profits. My own definition of sustainability, you see here, it's we have to measure our activities, our goods differently. My measure is man hours per invested per kilogram to produce something, and euros per kilogram of the result. And you can easily see this banana, this brown banana at the bottom is where we are today. So even smart goods like USB sticks, they are not really worth a lot, and they are not really producing a lot of labor. If you look further up, you can see selling performance, reusing goods, remanufacturing objects or components is about at the level of life sciences and nanotech. And if you read the small print at the bottom, you can see that the man-hour per kilo ratio of remanufacturing my own car engine recently is 270 times that of manufacturing a new engine. So the ratios is amazing. Even the euro per kilogram ratio is 27 times higher for remanufacturing. So the circular economy is about jobs, substituting manpower for energy, and creating wealth without consuming many resources. Why a performance economy? This is, I'm not sure if it's Holtz or Bansky. In any case, it shows you the risk we are running if we continue the linear industrial economy. Now, the circular economy and circular societies, the difference is one is non-monetarized, circular economies are monetarized. The important thing is sustainability comes from people caring for assets. And all waste is man-made. There is no waste in nature. All waste is anthropogenic, is man-made. And the third statement that is absolutely key, the circular industrial economy are disruptive, and they will not happen by themselves. They only happen through conscious decisions by people like you and me, like policymakers, industrialists. The performance economy is simply the most sustainable business model of the circular industrial economy because it closes the liability loop and it exploits sufficiency and efficiency solutions. Now, there is a lot of cultural impacts in the circular society, and Japan has very old tradition of sustainable practices. In other words, kitsugi, this golden joinery of ceramics, for example, if you use a glue, if you break a ceramic and you glue it back together with a glue that contains gold, then the repaired thing has a higher value than the ones that were not broken. It becomes a very unique piece. So that is really, uniqueness is part of giving objects value. The same goes for the cultural objects such as the jeepneys here in the Philippines or the teddy bear on the long product life comes from desirability and caring by the owner user. So I have a Jaguar that's 53 years old, but it was never produced to last that long. I made it last and still make it last by giving it care and repairs and keeping it afloat, keeping it going. So the owner user is in charge of, in control of these things. Now, just briefly, there are two resources that are special and absolutely necessary for us to survive. One is water. There's no resource that can replace water. And the other one is labor. It's the only resource that can be improved through education and training, but will rapidly degrade if unused. So water and people, I think, is the key to sustainability. Now, a sustainable, I can't read the top line, but you can read it. The sustainable society has a lot of problems, challenges. Every problem is a challenge if you look at it the right way. Now, the circular industrial economy can solve the first three. The performance economy can solve the first four, but the other problems have to be solved by other means. And other means is, if you go back to this global commons at the bottom, global commons is where the things we should share and care as a global society. And you can see that all the global commons are basically going the wrong way. Oceans, atmosphere, CO2, space on the right, radio wavelength, the backside of the moon, it's all getting a mess, and rapidly. That the diagram is not the population curve, could also be, it's actually the number of satellites in low Earth orbit that are basically polluting space. So let's repeat, a low waste society is created by the circular economy because it includes cultural changes in individual behavior from consumer to user, or it can also say from consumer to carer or to stewardship. Low carbon society because the circular industrial economy preserves the embodied water, electricity, CO2 emissions that are embodied in any manufactured object. Low anthropogenic mass because the circular industrial economy preserves the existing stocks of physical objects. We'll come back to that one. And loss prevention because the performance economy internalizes the costs of waste and of risks. In other words, the producer has to carry these costs, not society, not the user. Now, just to repeat, circular economy is about stocks, maintaining their quantity, quality, purity, utility, and of course, there are many different stocks. I'm mostly going to talk about manufactured stock, assets or stocks, or capitals, whatever you prefer. The earliest concrete building is more than 2,000 years old. It's the Pantheon in Rome. And you can see that the Romans actually were capable of producing concrete that lasts forever, whereas we are using steel reinforced concrete that lasts 100 or 200 years. So we have lost a lot of knowledge from the past because we have to be efficient. The Romans didn't have to be fast constructors. They had to build things that were supposed to last forever. So just to repeat, circular economies and sustainability both have in common that we talk about people caring for assets, for stocks. And circular industrial economy is disruptive and therefore will only happen if we take a conscious decision to do so, which I'm not very optimistic that we will do. Now, the circular industrial economy has two main activities. The area of R, which is local, remanufacture, reuse, repair, and the area of D, which is regional, which is de-linking materials. You can see that the focus is on the use of objects, whereas the traditional base material manufacturing industries, logistics, take a back seat. Now, value is very important because the linear industrial economy is based on depreciated value. The circular economy is based on maintaining existing values. And you can see this little joke. Museum guard, that is 100-year-old statue you have broken. And the chap says, thank God, I feared it was a new one. Because in insurance or economics, anything that is 500 years old has no value. Even 10-year-old car has, economically speaking, no more value. So you may have seen this diagram. Circular economy is basically getting rid of waste. You can push the waste basket aside. Societal benefits of the circular economy have been calculated by Christian Skandberg and Anders Wickman in Sweden for 7 European countries. The result has been the same, amazingly, for these very different countries: Poland, Portugal, Spain, France, Sweden. You have the reference at the bottom to the link. Basically, a circular industrial economy enables us to reduce CO2 emissions by 66%. But we still need innovation for the other, whatever, 40%, because we want to go beyond 100%, at least in industrialized countries. Let's look at the area of R. Or, sorry, let's look at the circular industrial economy. I can't read the top line, as I said. It's all about economics, innovation, competitiveness, and caring. So we have there, we will look together at the area of R, the area of D, how to close the invisible liability loops, but because it makes economic sense. Innovation in materials, incentivizing sustainable policy making, because at the moment, policy making is in almost any country promoting the linear circular economy and spreading the circular economy and performance economy knowledge, for example, through the circular economy alliance.com, is very important, because people will not discover these things by reading their newspapers. So we have to spread the knowledge actively. In a performance economy, as I said, it's the only economy where you make money with sufficiency. So actually, by not doing anything, if you're selling performance, if you're selling results, the most profitable way is not to do anything. But that's the trick that the manufacturing economy has never learned. And that means understanding nature, science, traditions, promote sufficiency by users, and through knowledge. Thus, energy buildings, plowing by night. Plowing up by night is still done by the Amish in the US. It actually is based on the fact that most of the germs in nature, when they come to the surface, they need light. Otherwise, they will not germinate. If you plow at night, you basically have no bad weeds, nothing to look that you don't want. I let you read all this because you read much faster than I talk. So this is the area of R. And you can see it also includes operation, maintenance, innovation to extend the service life of objects. The base of the circular economy is the use value of objects and trust. We have probably never thought about it, but whenever you get a banknote, this is a second owned or pre-loved, or whatever you want to call it, second-hand.
Bom, quer ver uma coisa?
Sorry? There are no new banknotes, or the chance that you ever get one is very small. So why do you trust these dirty, contaminated, old design banknotes? Because their value is not in the banknote, it's guaranteed by the national banks. The societal benefits of circular economy, microeconomy. This is my other car, which I have now given to my younger son. It's a 1969 Toyota. And I analyzed over the first 30 years, what is the cost structure? Of course, when I bought it new, 100% went to the factory. After 10 years, labor, local labor, skilled labor where I live, was 18%. After 20 years, it was 34%. And after 30 years, half the money I've spent on this car, except fuel, actually went into labor, skilled labor where I live. So this is why the product life extension of objects like cars or whatever, houses, computers, is a substitution of manpower for energy, local manpower for global energy. Now, in the area of art, derelict objects are the resources for new products. Somebody in Spain built a cathedral only from abundant building components. And it looks like a new one, I suppose, at least from this distance. Remanufacturing with technological upgrading of used objects is done in not only the States, but especially with aircraft in the States and in Canada. So if you want a very sturdy, solid, slow speed aircraft to do research in the Arctic or Antarctic, a 1940 aircraft is what you need. Just bring it up to technology date. Remanufacturing in Europe is not very popular. It's more popular in the States, according to Robert Lund already 30 years ago. In China, interesting, it is one of the 5 pillars of the industrial strategy, has been for 15 years, because 2 arguments: you get unrivaled quality for unrivaled prices. And the second one, which is the hidden one, is it provides, remanufacturing provides resilience in war times. In other words, in war times, if you cannot import materials or new products, you can always remanufacture the products you have to make them last longer. Now, these I won't go into details. These are some strategies how you can improve the operation maintenance of existing engines, existing ships, or in this case, Leica, this is how to detect underground cables and pipes, so pipes, so that you don't endanger the employees doing it. But the key thing, the key message of the area of R is you take these decisions. It's not policymakers, it's not industry. Each of you and me and us, we are in control of our belongings. We decide how long they will live. Now the area of D. Again, you read faster than I do, and then I speak. It's maintaining the value and purity of existing material stocks of molecules and atoms for reuse in new production. The Anthropocene started 10 months before I was born, and it ended in Hiroshima with a nuclear bomb. It unleashed scientific progress that we had never seen before. But everybody was very thrilled and overlooked the fact that because all these things, all these materials and objects are man-made. In other words, nature cannot deal with them. So there is a producer liability. Whoever creates it must be held liable. Liable, the difference between responsibility and liability. Responsibility, if you have a car accident, you probably were a responsible driver, but you had bad luck. But the liabilities, you still have to pay for the damage you've done. Or that's why you need an insurance. So liability means you have to pay. Responsibility means you have to say, sorry, I went to it again. Now, today's in Sweden, this case, recycling industry is absolutely zero in maintaining the material value of materials. You can see here the material value lost, the second column on the right, even for things such as steel, 20% of the material value is lost. But if you look at the Swedish recycling statistics, they tell you that 75 to 95% of the material, of the tons, are recovered. So it's not the tons, it's the tonnage that's the problem. It's the value. We have to develop recycling activities or end-of-life activities that enable us to recover the value and the tonnage of the materials. And of course, then you look at the complexity of objects. Modern automobile contains, just look at it and you'll be absolutely dizzy. You will never be able to separate these components and chemical elements. Same for computers. This is a microchip. We now have more than half the periodic table which is in a microchip. So you will never recover these elements, whatever you try. So the solution must be reuse, reprogrammable microchips. So you can reuse them and you will not lose the stuff, the chemical elements. The solar photovoltaic panels is interesting because they last about 20 to 30 years. What happens at the end, nobody knows, because we can actually not. 90% ends up in landfills. What a waste of rare materials. The one example where a circular economy already works in chemistry is in the area of the depolymerization of nylon, PA6 and 66. That was developed by DuPont, Interface, Harper Company, American, both American companies. Depolymerization of PPHD by a Norwegian fish farming equipment producer, and Unilever for bottles. In the research and development stage are a number of things that things are moving, but we are too slow. Deconstructing buildings, at the moment, I think I'm only aware of one building that was deconstructed in Tokyo, Japan. They simply put a big elevator in the lift shaft and then descended all the materials and components from the top to the bottom. And that, of course, means they recovered also the initial energy, not only materials and components. Singapore is the only country that is capable or has tried to convert wastewater back into drinking water and at the same time recovering interesting phosphorus and other waste, what we consider waste, which is really resources. Now, a shining light, a company which has accepted, not being forced by to do, has accepted to solve this problem of the area of D, is Vestas, one of the biggest producers of windmills, because these rotor blades from windmills cannot be dismantled or linked, and they are normally incinerated or buried. And Vestas is now working with universities in Denmark to find a way to recover the carbon fibers and the epoxy from these windmill blades. And you can see what we are talking about, 25 tons of rotor blades in a few years' time per year. So here we have a picture of circular economy. You have it starts at the point of sale. Then you have the product use, which is the focus, the area of R. Then you have the area of D, recovering atoms and molecules as pure as new. And then you have the innovative new materials component systems that go into production of new materials, but also into the products in use. And on the innovative policymaking side, We have to close the liability loop, make manufacturers pay for what they have produced. If you want to read anything in English, it's easy. This Circular Economy by Routledge, a user's guide, has become quite a standard piece of work. Now, performance economy. Let's look at the watch. Performance economy, the key thing is that you are selling performance instead of selling objects. You accept a lifelong liability, but you gain the resilience of owning a fleet of objects. You save money, no compliance, no transaction costs, because today's objects are resources of tomorrow, available locally at yesteryear's resource prices. In other words, you are no longer part of the global supply chains and the volatility of commodity prices. Commodity prices have gone down from 1900 to 2000, and they are now shooting up. In the last 20 years, they went sky high, higher than before 1900. So you have an interest in keeping your own resources to yourself, keeping control. So energy, objects, molecules as a service. The important thing is the retained ownership the knowledge of operation and maintenance, and the knowledge of manufacturing. Let's continue. Oop, stuck again. Well, you obviously want to look at this longer because the computer doesn't want to move. Simply wait. It's like last time. In the meantime, we can look at the discussions. Okay, let's see. No.
Okay, Doctor, I can share my screen because I do have the presentation ready.
Okay, so I'll leave. I don't know what's happening. Okay, this is slide 45. Can you continue with slide 46? And I'll get out.
Sure. Sure. Just a moment.
Oh, now it seems to move again, or what can you? No, I don't think so. Okay, take over, please. Slide 46, yes. So the thing that is very different from the linear industrial economy that sells product at the point of sale, the performance economy introduces the factor time into economics and therefore redefines quality as the optimization not only of technical systems, but the optimization of technical systems, of liability, and of utilization. Next, please. Objects as a service. This is actually nothing new. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but objects as a service has been around since Roman times. Inns and hotels, ferries, sharing things. Next, please. But it's based on functional use value. Objects as a service, you're selling functional use value. Next, please. Now, this is the business models of the performance economy, what I said before. You need two of these three skills. So it's either retained ownership and liability, and original equipment manufacturing, and operation and maintenance skills. If you have all three, you are selling performance. If you have two of those three, you are selling goods as a service, or molecules as a service, or function guarantees. And there are a number of examples. Next, please. So one example of selling function guarantees, I don't know, Burkhardt compression, I shouldn't tell you, but if you have some money invested in Burkhardt compression, because it's one of the key actors in the hydrogen economy. They are, wherever you use hydrogen, you have to compress it. But they are not only manufacturers. They moved from manufacturers to operation and maintenance, but now they have gone a step further. They will take over for any client the full range of compressors, never mind who produced them, throughout the entire life cycle, and they will make these things work. They will guarantee that your compressors work even if they are produced by another company. And this is what the client wants. The client wants bloody thing to work. He doesn't really care about how old it is or where it comes from. Next, please. Now, innovative ideas are also on the molecule side. A friend of mine, Andrew Hagen, and some friends wrote this paper because now instead of selling performance of objects, you could sell the performance of molecules. You could rent molecules. In other words, developing countries, especially where most of the mining activity is, the government could give companies a lease to operate the mines, but the resulting molecules are the property of the government that then will lease it to manufacture, making sure these molecules will come back, or otherwise the manufacturer has to pay rent forever. So if that comes through, molecule leasing, then any manufacturer who wants to survive financially has to lease his objects to make sure the objects come back and conceive the object in a way that he can give these molecules back. Next, please. Pay as you use. This is in Africa, I think, or India, maybe India. The problem with food waste is that most small farmers don't have refrigerators or cold stores. So this is a Basel-based company. If you build cold stores, then people can put their agricultural produce for a pay as you use. You don't have to invest anything. You just basically put your fruit there. Next, please. These are the details of cooling as a service with the name of the company. Next, please. Now, further examples include Xerox, Trumpf, and Munich Re, pay-per-use for laser cutting equipment, Philips selling light as a service, Shadow rents PC Window 10, internet shopping, that's a fascinating one, through a local delivery service in the favelas. In the favelas, no white man will go in his right mind. So you cannot order anything because through internet it will not be delivered. And this is simply a group of young people living in the favelas, in these local communities, that will order the thing for you on internet, get it to a central point, and then deliver it to you. So it's the missing link between internet deliveries and people that don't have access to safe delivery. Then you have one of the famous ones is Rolls-Royce. Go on, yes, go. Rolls-Royce selling power by the hour for jet engine. Next, please. This is just a publicity page again, if you would like to know more about these concepts. Next, please. Now, public green procurement, buying systems performance instead of buying objects. A lot of treasurers have a problem with that because then they think they lose control. In fact, it's the other way around. They initiate radical innovation into the performance economy, and by privatizing the initial financial needs for construction, the nation states don't have to pay for bridges, tunnels, airports. They don't have to pay for maintenance costs and decommissioning costs. So they actually increase national resource security and resilience. Next, please. Now, there are some examples, you have certainly heard about it, but maybe you didn't realize that SpaceX was actually initiated when NASA, during the space shuttle times, decided that they would no longer buy hardware. They would only buy space services. Why should NASA be concerned with repairing rockets? All they want is send the bloody stuff to the moon or wherever and get it back. And NASA's Elon Musk, of course, thinks money. So if you want to make money with space services, what you have to do is manufacture a reusable rocket that can land the way it took off, propulsive rocket landing. And that way you can now sell your services for a third of what the good old big rockets used to cost. Next, please. You can do the same with bridges. This is a famous example in France, motorway bridge, 290 meters above ground. It was built in 3 years, but it's a 78-year contract. Design, finance, build, operate the bridge. Now you have to be very careful. If you make a bad job, you are bankrupt. If you take any job like this, private finance initiative, you have to make sure you get everything right. You have to get the best designers, the best finance, the best operator, zero maintenance, and then you can actually make money. Next, please. Policymakers have a very important role to play. Again, I'll let you read this later on. It's the main thing is stop taxing workers' wages. Don't tax things that you want to promote. Tax things that you don't want. Non-renewable resource consumption, waste, pollution, anything, but for God's sake, let's stop taxing labor. We should give labor an incentive to go on. Next, please. Circular sciences, and we're nearing the end. In order to prevent a new era of D with the materials that we have produced today, we have to develop circular sciences. Of course, any of these, but the main thing I will try to show is energy in metallurgy. These things are the key to sustainability. Next, please. So innovation in circular energy. Again, there's always a choice of options. Next, please. Another choice of options, maybe one that you will be astonished, is using iron as a source of energy. Or in Finland, sand batteries. How can you store heat in a big sand battery? And then you recover it. The last one is the one that is in Europe, especially in Germany, still fought nuclear microplants, and yet it was developed by a Nobel Prize, Carlo Rubbia, who was the CEO at CERN in Geneva, can actually burn nuclear waste, and there is no catastrophic risk. So it's a completely different technology. It can solve many problems, but if you are German, you are allergic to anything nuclear, and you prefer to import nuclear electricity from Germany or France, that's fine, but you don't want to do it. Next, please. Windmills, everybody talks about the big windmills with a horizontal axe, but you can actually do it as efficient with a vertical axe. And these things can be small, you can be used in towns, you can even do it your own. It's actually not so difficult, and you can improve it, especially in regions with a lot of wind. Next, please. Just an example in Switzerland that the hydropower companies now start to produce hydrogen and sell hydrogen to anybody who likes it. Next, please. One of the big producers of decentralized green electricity is China. Whenever you want to know who is the biggest producer of what, obviously it's China. But these floating plants, also floating solar farms, it's called, also exist in Singapore, Saudi Arabia, Portugal, France, Switzerland. So it's catching on. This is something that has caught on within a few years. And you can see that Japan wants to become the biggest factory producing hydrogen company. Next, please. And green, if you produce it with green electricity or green whatever, it's green hydrogen. Just the things you have to think about. Next, please. But now this is probably something you will be surprised. There's not only oil and gas underground, there are also large underground reservoirs of natural hydrogen. Now, if you ask to any physicist, he will tell you no, not hydrogen immediately disappears when it's, and this has been known for quite actually since Greek times, but we never exploited it because it was so easier to exploit gas and oil. But now people start to realize that these natural hydrogen reserves are actually created by nature underground. It's used connected to rocks, and so everything you have seen before is questioned by many people, especially again in Germany. Hydrogen is taboo. But now, of course, if hydrogen is a natural energy, then we cannot really be against it. We would be stupid. Next, please. Toyota and Hyundai are the leading vehicle manufacturers of hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, trucks, and cars. Next, please. Again, you need all the other equipment that goes with it. Next, please. This is green ammonia. Is probably maybe one of the best things for ships. It has so far only been used on other things such as the X9 NASA rocket aircraft. But ammonia is basically hydrogen. It's just one molecule more. So it's very funny that these Winterthur Gas and Diesel Limited used to be called Sulzer. Sulzer was the main producer of diesel engines, turbo engines for ships 50 years ago. And now the company has disappeared, but now they discovered there are new opportunities that nobody seems to be interested in. Next, please. So circular metallurgy, we have to get it circular. But you can also, here you have the iron powder as a new circular fuel. That seems a bit strange, but it's absolutely chemically explainable. Next, please. We have to recover metals and semi-metals from wastewater, whatever. Next, please. Another one, this is a Chinese method. Next, please. We have to recover these other metals also because we need clean, pure steel, pure copper, pure whatever. Now, why is green steel the key to a sustainable society? Because all objects are made of steel or produced on equipment made of steel. So if we can produce green steel from using green electricity, electric arc furnace, or green hydrogen in high furnaces, then we can produce green products. But without green steel, there will never be any green products. So, especially in Europe, everybody is focusing on recycling. For God's sake, that will never get us anywhere. We have to make clear what we need is no carbon and no waste. And that means a complete rethink of economy from a throughput to a truly circular economy. Next, please. Swedish company is the first producer of green steel. Next, please. Another example, ABB. Next, please. Now it gets fun because systems innovation is where you really can be creative. How can you make laundromats attractive? It's not the machines. Forget the laundry machines. It's how you make things attractive, especially shared use. Next, please. Lighthouses have done more for the safety of shipping than any technical improvement to ships. But they are a social innovation because they are not, nobody makes money with lighthouses. So it's a social, it's a common basically. It's a new commons, a anthropogenic object commons. Next, please. Think how you can produce an autonomous mobile laundry that doesn't need water, that doesn't need electricity. It's a problem that has been tackled by students from the Applied Science University in Zurich, and it's running. It's magic. The nice thing about systems innovation, it's magic. Next, please. Electric trains. The top is the first generation of the German high-speed train. Has a big locomotive beginning, big locomotive at the end, 10 carriages in between. on the bottom is the 4th generation train with no locomotives, only carriages. Think about how you do this. You simply put on every axle, you put an electric motor. So you don't need a locomotive. Every carriage is a locomotive. Next, please. How can you avoid damages in transport, logistics, in this case of white goods? Well, you need a reusable, solid transport packaging. And you can see the reductions in waste, in health damages, energy, anything minus 70 or 80%. Next, please. I think there are about 5 left in case you get nervous. System solutions. In the old days, all these big aircraft were pulled along, pushed along, and then somebody, because you have to overcome the friction, these tractors got bigger and bigger, up to 100 tons. And then somebody came along with this plane transport system that only weighs 10 tons. And yet it goes much faster and safer. And the trick is you don't need 100 tons. You need to be able to lift 100 tons. Lift the front wheel of the aircraft, because that's enough weight. So you need a very strong lift, not a very strong pull. Next, please. This is the first time I've come across a perpetuum mobile, a thing that works and works and works and works. And the trick is, in this special situation, you have a quarry on top of a mountain and a cement factory at the bottom of the mountain. It's an electric dumper. So by going down the mountains fully loaded, it recharges the batteries and then it goes back up empty using the power, and then it goes down. So it goes up and down and never has to go to any refill. But obviously can't do this everywhere, but where you can do it, for God's sake, let's become creative. Let's identify the opportunities where this kind of idea actually does work. Next, please. Thank you. Thank you for listening. I'm sorry I may have been a bit too long, but I hope you enjoyed the show, and you have my email here. You can write any questions to me, or if you still have time, you can, I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Dr. Walter. And yes, anyone interested, please feel free to unmute yourselves and ask Dr. Walter questions. Yeah, I agree with you, Matthew, because we've never thought of approaching an angle of economy, since we're all busy into focusing towards one direction. Anyone else, any questions that you have? Okay, Professor, I would like to ask the questions. So when you spoke about sustainability rating during the initial slide, so right now there are certain financial institutions who are considering bringing this under their purview to rate companies and then fund them accordingly.
Sorry, the sound is hacked.
Pardon?
The sound is hacked. Do you have another microphone?
Oh, sorry, just a moment.
I didn't understand what you said.
Yeah. So when you spoke about performance sustainability rating, so right now there are a lot of financial institutions that are rating companies based on their resources that they use and then funding them. So what do you think about this trend, which is emerging from the European side to the rest of the world?
Well, the problem with all these ratings, ESG or sustainable development goals, it's an open door for greenwashing. Because, for example, if the ESG, if you have a board that only has women, then on the other hand, you can have a lot of pollution to compensate. So ESG should be, all three should be 100%, not cross compensations. And then, of course, it's an invitation for consultants to offer companies to do these reports. But as I said before on liability responsibility, the ESG reports are about responsibility. And that ends up in the ESG reports. And only consultants read them. If you put a ESG liability, especially the environmental and social liability, then that goes into the financial statements. That is read by the investors, and then you have a problem, because it's not so easy to cheat investors because it's their money. So I think we should get away from reports that are not linked to money. If you, it's difficult sometimes to put things like child labor or the absence of child labor or the absence of work into of hunger into money, but at least where we can put a figure to it, we should put a figure to it, and that would be the best incentive for companies to shift from the manufacturing economy to selling objects to the performance economy, selling the use of objects. And my critique of the Sustainable Development Goals, look at these things. I think number 2 is no hunger. I mean, for God's sake, is anybody against no hunger? You know, it's all these statements say things that are obvious, but it's the feel-good thing, but it doesn't solve any problem. It doesn't, by saying that the SDG 2, no hunger, doesn't feed anybody. What we need is solutions to solve these problems, not listing the problems. Sorry. Next.
True. Matthew, feel free to unmute yourself and ask this question. It's a very interesting question.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much. I'm very curious your thoughts on labor and the inputs that we need to do now in the terms of education and build into people. So then when changes do come, how we build that resiliency into it. I work with a lot of like tradesmen and stuff, and they're worried that ESG and everything taking their jobs. And this was very interesting because it's just like, no, you're going to do more repairs than build new. So that was interesting from my perspective, but I just want to shoot that out. Thank you.
Well, the remanufacturing, I have a look at the report from Robert Lund at MIT. What was it called? The Hidden Planet or something like this. The remanufacturing is really where the knowledge and the money is. And the reason is that I've worked for a couple of years as personal assistant of the CEO of a company that had a worldwide monopoly on rail grinding. And it sounds stupid, grinding rails in situ. But if you change rails, you have to interrupt the railway. That's always a problem of risks. And if you grind the rails in situ, then you don't have to do anything. You don't have to interrupt anything. One of the problems we had with investors was the company only got 5 cents per meter of ground rail. Ridiculous, you know, this is a retail business. And every time I asked the people, do you know how many railway lines there are in the world that need to be ground at least once a year? 120 million kilometers. So once you start multiplying 120,000 or million kilometers with 5 cents per meter, it's actually a lot of money. And the profitability of this service, it does not depend on the cost of the service. If you sell it for half the price that it costs to change the rails, then everybody's happy. So it's a cash cow, but it's invisible from the outside. We did something similar for a company in the Atlantic port in France. They were looking for diversification. And you know, when a ship comes into port to load or unload, it is losing money. It's just sitting there. And so we developed a system that allows to do repairs, painting, welding, anything of the ship that is under, part of the ship that is under the water, while the ship is at quay. And then, of course, again, this saves the ship owner to go to a dry dock. So he is prepared to pay much more for that underwater service than he would for the same work in a dry dock. So very often the problem or the opportunities of the circular industrial economy, performance economy, is find the niches where you get an additional benefit, where you're not only selling your things. And now another reason why remanufacturing is of engines, of diesel engines in this case, is actually one of the areas where the remanufactured engine is better than the new one. When new engine is heated, cooled, and these cycles allow the molecules to find their definite place. So when the engine comes into remanufacturing the first time, you have to shave off the top, it has cracks, it has, all these things can be repaired, but it takes money, it takes time. When the same engine comes back into remanufacturing second time, it's perfect, because all the molecules in the meantime had found their definite place. And then, of course, that I learned from Caterpillar. How can you make even more money? By manufacturing the engines from the beginning for remanufacturing. So in other words, you produce the engine with sleeves where the things are running. And when it comes into remanufacturing, you simply push out the sleeves, put in new sleeves. That's much quicker than to machine the whole. So that there is a big learning effect. Once you get into remanufacturing, you start to realize you can do it better and better, and therefore it becomes more and more profitable. It uses a lot of labor. It's a dirty job. It uses very little material. Remanufacturing my Jaguar engine, 50-year-old Jaguar engine, used 20 kilograms of new material for a 200 kilogram engine. So, but of course, it cuts out the producers, because for every engine that gets remanufactured, in the case of cars, the manufacturers sell one car less. It's pars pro toto syndrome. By repairing one specific part, you save the whole. And so that's what we see at the moment with electric mobility. Everybody says, okay, now throw out your dirty cars and buy an electric car. But most of these cars could be converted to either liquid natural gas or to hydrogen. Hydrogen as a fuel. That would be CO2 free. What we will see next thing is in Europe, we will have a breakdown of electricity grids, because you cannot simply put more and more cars on the grid, especially in winter, and keep your fingers crossed. It simply doesn't work. We need other fuels, and I'm personally convinced that hydrogen will be the long-term solution. Now with this discovery of underground natural hydrogen, it starts to convince a lot of people that maybe we simply overlooked so far. Because in Greece, you have a hydrogen flame that has been burning since ancient times, and it's still burning. So these reservoirs seem to be replenished, naturally replenished. So again, very often we take short-term decisions because we don't see the whole thing. We have to learn to really look in a holistic way at the problem and look for system solutions or whatever you call it. But we have to get away from this silo thinking. You know, we have energy specialists, material specialists, sustainability specialists, and they all contradict each other because they all optimize their thing. No, you have to optimize the whole thing.
Thank you, Dr. Walter. And I'm sorry, all of you, that we are actually crossed our time. But feel free to reach out to Dr. Walter, and he'll revert back to you. I will share the recording of this session and the presentation that Dr. Walter shared today. And Dr. Walter,
let me
yeah,
just
sure,
answer one question that was there. The so-called less developing or the developing nations all have a circular economy, a very functional service economy by necessity, sometimes by poverty, by rarity. But the problem of the circular economy is a problem of the rich nations with affluent markets. That's where we need a conscious decision to change. In many developing countries, you have a perfect circular economy, and you know how to do it, and you do it.
Thank you, Dr. Walter. And yeah, again, the entire session was really insightful. It did give us a very different perspective about what is to be considered in terms of performance economy. And we all need to have an open mindset and have a macro and a microeconomic view in whatever we pursue. Thank you, Dr. Walter. Thank you all for joining in. And yeah, it was a wonderful session.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much. All the best for all your endeavors.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Martin.